One misstep, and the empty space below offers no second chance. These bridges do more than connect two sides. They suspend humans between dizzying heights and their most instinctive fears. From transparent glass walkways, clinging to icy cliffs, to steel spans, stretching across canyons hundreds of meters deep, every step demands absolute focus. Some are ancient rope crossings swaying in the wind, while others are modern megastructures extending over vast oceans where storms are a constant threat. This is a journey to the world's most dangerous bridges, where bold engineering and raw courage decide who reaches the other side. Kuwandinski Bridge. Originally a forgotten ruin of a legendary railway line, this bridge was never finished for cars, but remains a deadly challenge for the reckless. The surface is not paved, but is a jagged patch of thousands of rotting wooden railway sleepers, creating a rough surface like a giant spike bed testing the suspension. With no management, drivers are forced to carry their own wooden planks to manually patch up deadly holes that appear suddenly under the wheels. On this lonely journey, passengers must get out and walk as spotters, signaling every inch so the wheels do not slip off the blind edge. Even the most experienced drivers must always unlock and open the car door, ready to jump out to escape if the wind flips the car into the river. This is truly a dangerous gamble, where the line between life and death depends only on rotting wood and human survival reflexes. Deception Pass Bridge, USA. Stretching across the gorge like a gloomy steel web, this cantilever masterpiece is pinned firmly into ancient volcanic cliffs, shaded by old cedar and fir trees. Born during the Great Depression in 1935, this great structure was created by ordinary young laborers who had to hang on ropes to carry thousands of tons of steel over the abyss. Beneath the bridge, obscured into a wet cave, millions of blocks of seawater are squeezed through the crevice, creating brutal torrential currents up to 10 miles per hour. This suffocating water throat was once the ultimate maritime nightmare, tearing apart countless shabby boats that accidentally underestimated the destructive power of the tide. Travelers walking across here bear a suffocating feeling when squeezed into a narrow path of less than 3 feet, bursting into panic, facing the fragile railing close to a 180-foot deep hole. The blend between the macabre beauty and the violent gorge has cast a mourning curtain over the structure, turning it into a witness of chilling urban legends. Uain Bridge, Myanmar. Standing tall through the passage of time, like a colossal rustic skeleton, this Myanmar architectural masterpiece proudly boasts being the oldest and longest teak wood bridge in the world today. Its survival over nearly 2 centuries comes not from flashy paint, but from its own natural oil that turns the wood into an impenetrable biological fortress against rot and termites. Swirling nature forces the bridge to face drastic fluctuations of the lake, from standing bare and towering 13 feet above the dried bottom to being nearly swallowed by floodwaters lapping at its floorboards. That mesmerizing precariousness stems from 1,086 giant pillars initially lacking concrete foundations, driven only about 5 feet deep into the loose alluvial mud. Even more astonishingly, this entire 19th century structure is tightly locked with mortise and tenon joints without iron nails. The heavier the pedestrian step, the more solidly the wooden pegs grind together. Even so, the cruel reality of erosion has forced humans to secretly replace the rotting pillars with rugged reinforced concrete, silently shattering the original organic nature of this masterpiece. Trift Bridge, Switzerland. Suspended like a silver thread across snow-capped peaks, this 560-foot cable masterpiece is a tragic testament to the devastation of climate change. The bridge hangs at a height of 330 feet above a stunning cloudy turquoise lake, a place that completely did not exist before 2002, but was born from millions of melting ice blocks. Despite 6 weeks of dangerous construction by helicopters suspended over the abyss, this fragile-looking structure is perfectly calculated to withstand a load of up to 500 tons. As you step out into mid-air, the intentionally swaying steel floor and the humming, mechanical howl of the wind have caused over 50% of visitors to freeze their muscles in terror. Through the terrifying gaps beneath your shoes, your vision plunges straight into the jagged eternal ice, retreating up the mountain like a fleeing, wounded giant beast. This mid-air walking experience is not only an extreme nerve test, but also a sorrowful elegy about the irreversible fading of magnificent nature. Jang Jaji Glass Bridge, China. Stepping out from the surreal frames of planet Pandora, this superstructure spans between sandstone pillars as high as 3,500 feet, like an invisible stroke in mid-air. With 100% transparent glass flooring, each of your steps is a direct confrontation with the deep abyss right under your shoes. The safety of the sturdy glass is astonishing, having challenged direct sledgehammer hits and 2-ton cars full of people driving over without any budge. On both sides of the bridge are 90-degree vertical cliffs where life resiliently clings to rocky crevices, creating a dramatic suspended ecosystem. As sunset falls, sunlight pierces through the glass and refracts into the canyon, turning the entire space into a surreal golden cinematic dream. This is also home to the world's highest bungee jump, ready to swallow daring souls into a free fall of nearly 1,000 feet in the heart of the canyon. Igui Dumidi Bridge, France. Firmly planted into 2 sharp granite peaks like giant blades, this short steel bridge hangs suspended across the sky at an unimaginable height of 12,605 feet. To reach this kingdom, travelers must entrust their lives to the steepest cable car in the world, shooting straight up 9,000 feet without any supporting pillars. At that extreme altitude, the atmosphere is so thin that the sky always takes on a cold, dark blue color, bringing an overwhelming illusion of grasping at the edge of the universe. In the brutal winter of -40 degrees Fahrenheit, a cup of boiling water thrown down the 3,000-foot abyss will instantly explode into a sparkling cloud of tiny ice dust. Right next door, a transparent glass box protruding from the cliff forces travelers to stand bare over 3,300 feet of empty freefall air, capturing the majestic beauty of the eternal snow mountain range. Esataka Bridge, Peru. Hanging like a golden silk ribbon amidst a cruel canyon, Esataka is the only grass bridge of the Inca Empire that proudly defies time. At the harsh elevation of 12,139 feet, indigenous workers must chew coca leaves to suppress fleshly pain to braid grass into 4 main cables 16 inches in diameter. That soft parabolic curve stretches across 98 feet, suspended 49 to 59 feet above the churning water, creating a mesmerizing contrast to the surrounding grey cliffs. Every footstep across the bridge will chill your spine with the rustling, crackling sound of breaking grass, even knowing this woven masterpiece can carry a weight of up to 3,307 pounds. That absurd sturdiness absolutely needs no blueprints, but flows in the bloodstream and instincts of chief engineers passed down through 5 centuries. More than just the function of a pathway, this organic architecture was once a defensive shield, ready to snap in a flash to become a death trap, stopping enemies. Royal Gorge Bridge, USA. Hanging like a fragile silver spiderweb between 2 red cliffs, this structure proudly holds the crown as the highest suspension bridge in the United States. The 955-foot deep abyss below is more than enough to swallow a 90-story building, whose top still could not touch the bridge's wooden deck. This V-shaped canyon is ruthlessly narrow, with vertical cliffs nearly 1,000 feet high, creating the feeling that 2 giant walls are about to collapse into each other. This terrain turns the place into a terrifying wind funnel, causing thousands of wooden planks to emit a resounding, bone-chilling creak whenever vehicles roll across. Through the small gaps under your shoes, your gaze will pierce straight down to the roaring, white foaming water at the very bottom of the deep abyss. When winter fog obscures both ends of the bridge, shaky footsteps bring an overwhelming illusion of walking suspended on clouds straight into nothingness. Sunshine Skyway Bridge, USA. Reaching over the deep blue ocean like a brilliant yellow fleet of sailboats, this cable, stayed masterpiece over 4 miles long, carries a magnificent beauty, but was reborn from death. The experience of gripping the steering wheel across here is a spectacular visual trick, as the extreme incline at the middle span completely cuts off visibility, bringing an overwhelming illusion of rushing straight into the sky. Located in the lightning capital of America, the 430-foot-high towers constantly attract blinding lightning strikes, and if the wind speed simply exceeds 40 miles per hour, all barriers will drop down to blockade death. Hidden beneath that pride is historical pain, when the old bridge was destroyed by a 20,000-ton machine right over the deep maritime channel, echoing with strong underground currents. Learning from blood, today's superstructure is armored by 36 underground concrete islands, a fortress strong enough to crush any 87,000-ton steel mass that dares to veer off course. The blend between the artistic wind-filled cables and the solid defense system has turned this place into an eternal, indestructible monument amidst the open sea. Seven-Mile Bridge, USA. Proudly spanning the violent dividing line between the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, this superstructure is a flat highway connecting giant coral islands. With no mountains or hills to shield it, gripping the steering wheel brings an overwhelming illusion, like flying a plane at a height of 65 feet amidst an ultimately empty space. The most haunting thing on this journey is the pursuit of the metal tomb less than 200 feet away, the pitch-black ruins of the dead old bridge. That rusty corpse was once revered as the eighth wonder of the world, traded with the blood and lives of thousands of workers before being destroyed by a super hurricane. Rising above the tragic past, every year this place is locked down for hours to welcome thousands of people participating in an exhausting race for 7 miles under the scorching tropical heat. This ribbon on the sea is truly a magnificent masterpiece, where the brilliant present life proudly parallels the desolate ghost of the ocean. Ojula Bridge, Mexico. Born from the blueprints of the legendary minds who once created the Brooklyn Bridge, this 1892 cable masterpiece is imprisoned in a desolate desert just to drain millions of tons of gold and silver ore. Located deep in the most barren and brutal fire pit of North America, the structure is completely devoid of the moisture of life when continuously baked under temperatures of over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That great steel frame endures extreme torture day and night, melting under the pouring sun during the day and shrinking painfully in the bone-chilling cold at night. Unlike solid concrete blocks, this 1,043-foot-long bridge is actually just a patched, skinny, wooden plank ribbon precariously hanging across a giant gorge. The gaping crevices on the floor ruthlessly expose the 328-foot deep hole, jagged with sharp rocks, forcing the eyes of travelers to look straight into the abyss of death after every step. Now, the former machine that gutted the mountain has turned into a ghostly path, helplessly challenging human courage amidst the decaying silence of time. Sidu River Bridge, China. Appearing like a brilliant yellow stroke of power, this giant suspension bridge pierces through the deep canyon, as humanity's great challenge to nature. Suspended at a height of 1,550 feet, the silent, empty space beneath the bridge is so deep that it has more than enough room to swallow the Eiffel Tower, whose top still could not graze the concrete deck. To overcome the treacherous, dense forest terrain, engineers made history by firing a military rocket to pull a 3,281-foot-long cable to the opposite cliff. The strange microclimate disparity creates an absurd phenomenon where white clouds and seas of fog do not fly in the sky but roll right beneath the bridge. The empty space taking up to 10 seconds of free fall is so terrifying that drivers are always advised absolutely not to look down the canyon to avoid spatial vertigo defeating their steering wheels. Titleless cliffwalk, Switzerland. Suspended at an altitude of 10,000 feet among the clouds, this masterpiece proudly holds the crown as the highest pedestrian suspension bridge in Europe. In this kingdom of eternal ice and snow, the air is so thin that it makes your heart pound even when you are just standing still. To build this wonder, humans had to use helicopters to lift 150 tons of reinforced steel through blizzards for 5 straight months. Through the fragile mesh beneath your feet, your eyes will pierce down into a 1,640-foot deep gorge, exposing the cruel blue crevasses of the glacier. The narrow walkway causes every gust of wind to transmit a terrifying vibration along the steel surface to the heels of everyone standing there. When fog rolls in and wipes everything white, this precarious walking experience suddenly turns into a solitary journey straight into an inescapable nothingness. Charles Quonan Suspension Bridge, Switzerland. Invisible, like a fragile silver thread draped across the Alps, this masterpiece is humanity's proud effort to cross a deadly landslide mountainside. Due to its endless length, the bridge naturally sags into a terrifying U shape, forcing travelers to walk downhill straight into the heart of the abyss. Although stretching endlessly, the walkway is ruthlessly squeezed to a width of 2 feet, hanging in mid-air by only 2 main cables, with a diameter of just 2 inches. Without wooden boards for cover, the hollow steel mesh floor forces your eyes to pierce down to the jagged, lonely rocks 279 feet below your shoes. The haunting feeling rises as endlessly swaying footsteps constantly recall the previous bridge that was completely buried by giant boulders. Imprisoned in a narrow space amidst the vast sky, this solitary journey is truly a nerve test that defeats even the most resilient will. Lancawi Skybridge, Malaysia. Curving like a soft silk ribbon across the ancient mountain peak, this masterpiece is one of the longest single-pylon curved suspension bridges on the planet. At an altitude of 2,170 feet above sea level, the structure relies on only one giant steel pylon to support the entire 410-foot span suspended in mid-air. Beneath your feet lies a 500-million-year-old tropical rainforest ecosystem where giant ancient trees shrink into tiny green dots amidst the ocean of millennial leaves. The fear will be pushed to its peak when you step on the load-bearing glass panels, looking straight through to the abyss over 2,000 feet deep, right under your shoes. The harshness of the ocean and high cliffs frequently creates sudden fog, capable of swallowing the entire bridge in less than 60 seconds. Walking on this curved path is a spectacular visual journey where the boundary between the primeval jungle and the deep blue ocean changes with every footstep. Kakam canopy walk, Ghana. Plucking travelers from the ground to throw them onto the roof of the old forest, this suspension bridge system clings its vitality entirely to the trunks of 6 giant emergent trees. The bouncing floorboard, a mere 12 inches wide, forces travelers to shuffle in a single file, enduring sudden shock waves and a slippery surface, slick with a rain of wild bird droppings. The enclosing nylon netting on both sides of the walkway also constantly disintegrates under radiation and acid from tropical mold, demanding endless manual patching by humans. Built in 1995, this precarious masterpiece is actually a desperate ecological bulwark aimed at suffocating the greed of loggers, destroying the great forest. Iya Valley Vine Bridges, Japan. Hiding like a twisting living entity across a gloomy abyss, the Iya Valley Vine Bridge system is Japan's most mysteriously legendary and tragic heritage. For this massive biological mass, weighing from 11,023 to 13,228 pounds, to hang proudly, indigenous workers had to gamble their lives climbing barehanded up steep cliffs to harvest the wild vines. The bridge span stretches solitarily across a void of 148 feet and hangs precariously 46 feet above the raging water, where sharp, cold reefs at the bottom constantly open their mouths, waiting to swallow errant footsteps. Poignantly, this masterpiece was born not for trade, but as the desperate defensive shield of exiled 12th century samurai warriors, ready to sever in a flash to drown the enemy into the deep abyss. Carrick Aetta Rope Bridge, Northern Ireland, UK. Stretching across the churning ocean throat like a fragile spider web, this iconic Northern Ireland structure is actually a pathway leading straight into the fossilized magma core of a volcano extinct for 60 million years. The precarious bridge span reaches across a gap of 66 feet and hangs suspended 98 feet above the water, where violent waves are tearing white foam on jagged, sawtooth-like hidden rocks. The beautiful jade water below is a lethal chilling machine at 46 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, ready to drown anyone who falls with immediate muscle-spasming thermal shock. Few expect that this terrifying walkway was woven 250 years ago, not for sightseeing, but as a sweat-drenched survival gamble by fishermen to net migrating salmon runs. To shoulder tens of thousands of modern lives, that rustic, rough rope shell is actually hiding high-strength steel cable cores to maintain a completely fake, pristine beauty. Even so, the fury of the wind and storms is still enough to collapse human pride, causing many travelers to cry in panic on the rocky island and be forced to call a rescue boat in ultimate shame. Muzo Suribashi, Japan. Bearing the beautiful name of the Bridge of Dreams, this rusting ruin, stretching across the gloomy realm, is dubbed by explorers as the most terrifying suspension bridge in Japan. Stretching solitarily 472 feet amidst a perilous canyon, this steel cable skeleton hangs at a deadly height of 272 feet, right above a murky jade river, looking like an acid bath waiting with an open mouth. Abandoned since the 1950s, the rotting steel mass is constantly gnawed by moss and humidity, entrusting travelers' lives to anchors driven into crumbly sedimentary cliffs ready to collapse. The surrounding landscape is suffocatingly claustrophobic as the giant coniferous forest and steep rock walls crisscross to seal the sky, blocking the sunlight like a pale grey prison. This place is actually a grave burying the endless illusions of exploiting the forest, now turned into an ultimate humiliating nightmare, mocking anyone who dares to take a step. Husini Suspension Bridge. Known as one of the scariest paths on the planet, this bridge looks more like a death trap than a safe transport structure. Located in a wind tunnel gorge without aerodynamic design, the bridge not only swings, but also snakes in a wave shape whenever the wind howls. The rotting floor planks are spaced so far apart that walkers are forced to look straight down at the ferocious river through gaping holes. The deep suction effect of the valley combined with the bridge's length creates a terrifying illusion, making the other side seem miles away and unreachable. Hanging at a height of about 100 feet, the water below is no longer soft, but turns into a hard concrete block if someone falls freely. A strange contrast appears when tourists crawl in fear, while locals calmly carry heavy loads across without holding the handrails. Chesapeake Bay Bridge, USA. Dubbed the most horrific psychological torture machine for drivers in America, this giant suspension bridge stretches proudly across the vast bay. With a length of more than 4 miles and suspended at a height of 186 feet, the structure is haunting due to its design with no emergency lanes and guardrails so low they strip away all sense of safety. Cold, crisscrossing blue-gray steel beams appear like the skeleton of an ancient monster, contrasting completely with the tiny appearance of container ships struggling in the deep water below. Even the strongest concrete pillars must strain to withstand the massive pressure from swift currents constantly eroding deep trenches at the bottom of the bay. Extreme fear here has given birth to the world's strangest service, where travelers are willing to pay $40 just to hire a driver to help them overcome their panic. Once the longest continuous steel structure on the planet, when inaugurated in 1952, this icon is now only remembered as a brutal test for nerves of steel. Mackinac Bridge, USA. Spanning a giant strait that divides two great freshwater lakes, this superstructure is a steel stroke bearing the absolute power of humanity. With a total length of up to 5 miles, gripping the steering wheel and gliding on the deck brings an overwhelming illusion, like a suspended voyage between the boundary of sky and water. When advancing to the center of the bridge, the mainland recedes and completely disappears, imprisoning travelers in a precarious iron cage amidst the vast, empty space. A breathtaking feeling strikes when tires grind on the hollow steel grating lane, creating a terrifying metal screech and transmitting a strong vibration echoing straight into the steering wheel. Supporting that entire masterpiece are two giant suspension cables woven from 42,000 miles of steel wire, a terrifying length, more than enough to wrap nearly 2 times around the Earth's equator. Under the brutality of frost and blazing sun, this metal mass constantly expands and contracts as if breathing, causing the deck's length to change by up to tens of feet. Confederation Bridge, Canada. Piercing through the ferocious strait, this great 8-mile-long concrete machine is an ironclad treaty, permanently erasing the millennial isolation of an island. This $1 billion gamble of the century proudly turns 65 cone-shaped pillars into a giant machine, crushing 3-foot-thick ice floes, carrying a smashing force of 3,307 tons. Viewed from above, this grayish silk ribbon deliberately winds into a giant letter S to break the deadly highway hypnosis of the endless white desert. At the main navigation channel, the asphalt surface suddenly curves up to a height of 197 feet, showing in drivers a heart-stopping illusion as if the road is about to snap in mid-air. Despite possessing ultimate mechanical power, this masterpiece still has to yield to the brutal hurricanes of nature. As soon as the wind howls beyond 43 miles per hour, the barrier system will immediately slam shut, absolutely forbidding humans to step on until Mother Nature calms her wrath. Akashi Kaiko Bridge, Japan. Piercing the cloud layer, the 984-foot-high towers of this bridge float in mid-air like a gateway leading into the heavens. For a quarter of a century, it proudly held the throne as the suspension bridge with the longest main span in the world, with an unimaginable distance of 6,532 feet. To suspend this 2.5-mile-long monster, they braided 36,830 small steel wires into giant main cable bundles with a diameter of 44 inches. total length of this cable matrix reaches 186,411 miles, enough to wrap around the Earth's equator 7.5 times. Like a living organism, this entire sensitive steel structure can expand or contract up to 7 feet each day under the solar heat. To survive storms, the bridge deck is equipped with a 46-foot high steel truss system resembling a dragon's skeleton, allowing wind to pass through instead of resisting.